People were shocked and angry over what the culprit had done. To show their sadness, many attended her funeral, bringing her favorite candies as a sign of respect. However, an unexpected shift happened as the investigation went on. Many started feeling sympathy for the perpetrator. This surprising twist left everyone wondering what the real story was. Let's travel back to Singapore in 2004 to uncover the truth. Singapore, known for being a clean and safe country with high security, became the center of attention when an 8-year-old Chinese immigrant named Hang Na vanished without a trace. Born on September 26, 1996, Hang Na grew up in a modest family in China. Her father had left before she was born to work illegally in Singapore as a fruit packer. While there, he started a relationship with another woman, which led to divorce. Hang Na's mother later remarried and had another child. By the time Hang Na was in elementary school, Singapore had introduced new immigration policies to attract skilled workers. Seeing a chance for her daughter to get a better education, Shuying decided to send her to Singapore. This decision came with high costs and sacrifices for the family. At just 7 years old, Hang Na moved from her hometown in Fujian to Singapore, nearly 3,100 miles away. She enrolled in Jin Tai Primary School, one of the country's most prestigious and expensive schools at the time. What mother wouldn't worry about leaving her child alone in a foreign country? To ensure Hang Na wasn't completely on her own, her mother decided to stay with her in Singapore most of the time. However, she occasionally flew back to Fujian to care for her younger child and her second husband. In this unfamiliar place, Hang Na's mother found a way to make ends meet by opening a produce stall near her daughter's school. She even rented the small space above the stall, where they could rest when needed. As her mother worked tirelessly selling fruits and vegetables, the locals and regular customers at the market grew fond of little Hang Na. Always cheerful, with a bright smile and a kind heart, the 7-year-old won everyone over. Despite knowing her family wasn't as wealthy as her classmates, Hang Na never complained. She was mature beyond her years, never asking her mother for luxuries and instead becoming her emotional rock. On the rare occasions they had time together, Hang Na would always say something that kept her mother going. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll study hard and become a doctor. I'll earn lots of money so you won't have to work so hard anymore." These words gave her mother hope, but tragically, Hang Na would never get the chance to make those dreams come true. On September 27, 2004, just one day after celebrating her birthday in their modest home, Hang Na's mother packed her bags to return to Fujian for a 2-week visit. She needed to check on her younger child. Since Hang Na had school, she stayed behind in Singapore, as she often did. This arrangement wasn't unusual. Hang Na was incredibly independent for an 8-year-old. She managed her meals, bathed at public bathhouses, and even traveled back to Fujian alone during school vacations. Her maturity and self-reliance impressed everyone who knew her. But this time, something went terribly wrong. What happened during those 2 weeks would leave everyone asking the same haunting question. How could this have happened to someone so young and full of promise? Stay with us as we unravel the mystery of Hang Na's story. Before leaving, Hang's mother entrusted her daughter's care to a roommate named Luan, giving her 100 Singapore dollars to manage her expenses for the next 2 weeks. On October 10th, nearly 2 weeks after her mother had left, Hang sweetly told her aunt, Li Shukan, that she wanted to call her mom. This was a common request whenever she missed her mother, and her aunt had no worries about letting her go. Around 1:30 p.m., after informing her aunt, Hang quickly made her way to the nearby payphone to call her mother. She dialed the number expertly, and as soon as she heard her mother's voice, she eagerly began telling her about everything that had happened in the days since her departure. She also mentioned needing an electronic English dictionary and a new pair of sandals, as her old ones were worn out. Her mother happily agreed to buy the items and promised to bring them back when she returned to Singapore. She also reminded Hang to be patient for a few more days, as she still had some work to finish at home, and her trip might be extended. After the brief 6-minute phone call, Hang appeared a little sad, missing her mother. If her mother had known that would be the last time she'd hear her daughter's voice, she might have kept the conversation going a little longer. Around 2:30 p.m., an hour later, Luan began to feel uneasy as Hang hadn't returned. How could a phone call take so long? Her gut told her something was wrong. She immediately went to the payphone but found no sign of Hang. Fear slowly crept over her as she started to panic. Luan searched the market where Hang's mother worked and even visited her school, but there was no trace of the young girl. Unable to bear the anxiety, Luan asked friends and acquaintances for help, and soon more than 20 people joined the search, combing through the area. By 10 p.m., after hours of searching, they turned to the police for assistance and informed Hang's mother back in Fujian. Upon hearing the news, Hang's mother dropped everything and took the earliest flight back to Singapore. The police immediately launched an investigation, interviewing everyone involved. The last confirmed sighting of Hang was when she left her home to make the phone call. She was wearing a jacket, blue shorts, and had short, dark hair. The police confirmed that Hang Na was an 8-year-old girl with a sweet, cheerful personality. Since arriving in Singapore, neither she nor her mother had any conflicts with anyone. Both were remembered by others as kind and friendly, so the police quickly ruled out the possibility of her disappearance being due to any form of revenge. Considering Singapore's small size, with a total area of only around 270 square miles, Hang was very familiar with her surroundings. It seemed unlikely that she got lost. With all other possibilities ruled out, the police were left with the most dreaded scenario. Hang Na had been kidnapped. The investigation strategy quickly turned to the wholesale market where Hang's mother worked. They questioned everyone who had been there that day, and it didn't take long before they received their first lead. An employee from a nearby cafe, Monsieur Lin, told the police she had seen Hang Na that afternoon. The young girl was wearing a jacket and blue shorts, but wasn't accompanied by anyone. According to Miss Lin, she noticed that Hang Na was not wearing shoes when she saw her that afternoon. When she asked why, Hang Na didn't respond, but instead smiled sweetly and skipped away. Several others in the market also reported seeing the young girl that day. They mentioned that Hang Na had been with a man they all recognized. He was a young man in his early 20s, not particularly bright, and worked a simple job packing goods. Despite his lack of sophistication, he was very fond of Hang Na and often treated her like his little niece. Following these reports, the police quickly tracked down the man, identified as Tuk Lenha, a worker at the market. When the police questioned him about Hang Na's disappearance on October 10th, Tuk Lenha was genuinely surprised. He admitted to seeing her that day and even gave her 2 mangoes, telling her not to wander and to go straight home. Given his cooperative and honest demeanor, without showing any signs of deception, the police allowed him to go home. Meanwhile, Hang Na's mother, Shuying, was not resting idly during the investigation. After arriving in Singapore on October 12th, she printed thousands of flyers with her daughter's picture and handed them out to anyone she met, asking if anyone had seen or heard anything about Hang Na. She tirelessly searched construction sites and water pipes, walking from dawn until late at night, fueled by the faint hope of finding her daughter. During her relentless search, Wang Shuing's niece called her to share a strange dream she had. In the dream, Hang Na was trapped on a mountain. Although dreams like this often have no real-world significance, Wang Shuing, desperate for any clue, couldn't dismiss the possibility. Despite being physically and emotionally exhausted, she carried her daughter's picture and her favorite teddy bear, hiking up the tallest mountains, unwilling to give up. Soon, Wang Shuing was not alone in her search. Reporters followed her, but so did many strangers who were moved by the story of the missing girl and the determined mother. Nearly the entire country became involved in the search for Hang Na, from business people to retirees, taxi drivers, and even volunteers from Malaysia. Some individuals offered rewards. One person offered 10,000 Singapore dollars for any leads, while another added 5,000. The search grew so large that it reached beyond Singapore's borders, with posters being put up in restaurants near the border and more people joining in. In just a few days, 70,000 flyers had been printed and distributed. But despite all the efforts, there was still no sign of Hang Na. It was as though she had vanished without a trace. However, everything took a sudden turn when the police decided to reinvestigate the case, going over all the leads and individuals involved. When they questioned Tuk Lenha again, his story changed entirely, raising suspicions among the police. In his second statement, he claimed, "I know where Hang Na is. She was kidnapped by..." A group of 3 or 4 Chinese men had threatened Hang Na, and Tuk Langhao explained that this was due to unresolved conflicts her mother had at the market. These conflicts had led to her daughter's abduction as an act of revenge. Tuk Langhao, hoping to help, volunteered to use his connections to contact the group and negotiate Hang Na's release. However, he claimed that because he was summoned to the police station early, he didn't have his phone and needed to return home to retrieve it. Though skeptical, the police agreed and assigned 2 officers to escort him. After retrieving his phone, Tuk Langhao was quickly placed in a car to return to the station for a lie detector test. But in an unexpected turn of events, he took advantage of the police's trust. He asked to stop at a restaurant on Pier Panjang Road, claiming he was hungry. After pretending to use the restroom, he slipped away unnoticed. When the police realized he hadn't returned for a long time, they panicked and understood that he had used their trust as a means to escape. Naturally, when a suspect flees during transport, the police must immediately pursue and set up a perimeter. This was the case with Tuk Langhao. However, despite mobilizing a large number of officers and conducting an extensive search, they couldn't catch him. Tuk Langhao seemed to have vanished without a trace. This raised the obvious question: where had he gone, and why did he run? Before answering that, let's take a step back and explore who Tuk Langhao was. Born on December 16, 1981, in Penang, Malaysia, he was the second of 4 children in a financially struggling family. Tuk Langhao lived in Malaysia with his family until the age of 8, when he decided to move to Singapore in search of better job opportunities. However, things didn't go as planned. Lacking qualifications, he was only able to find manual labor jobs. Over time, he met a Chinese-Indonesian woman, married her, and they had a son together. It was during this period that Hang Na and her mother met Tuk Langhao. They moved to Singapore and rented a small room in the same building where he lived. Over time, Tuk Langhao and Hang developed a close bond, almost like that of an uncle and niece. He would often pick her up on his motorcycle, taking her out for fun, buying her small gifts, and treating her to meals at various restaurants. Because of this, both Hang Na and her mother had let their guard down. They trusted Tuk Langhao, and he became a familiar, trusted figure in their lives. When the police informed Hang Na's mother that Tuk Langhao was the prime suspect in her daughter's disappearance, she couldn't believe it. She repeatedly asked if there had been a mistake, refusing to believe that the man she had trusted could be involved. However, the Singapore police were confident in their suspicions, and after Tuk Langhao's escape, their doubts were only reinforced. Let's consider the geography of Singapore at the time of Tuk Langhao's escape. Singapore is the smallest country in Southeast Asia, and the only place he could have fled to was Malaysia, his home country. As soon as Tuk Langhao's escape was discovered, Singapore police contacted Malaysian authorities for assistance. They reached out to Tuk Langhao's family members in Malaysia, including his parents and siblings. Tu Langhao's father, who was 62 years old at the time, told the police that he had received a phone call from his son after the escape. In the brief call, Tu Langhao insisted that he hadn't kidnapped Hang Na and had run away because he couldn't handle the pressure from the police. Even Tu Langhao's older brother was shocked when he heard his brother was the prime suspect in such a horrific crime. To him, Tu Langhao had always been a shy person who never even had the nerve to ask for a loan. The idea that he would kidnap a child seemed unbelievable. The Singapore police also contacted Tu Langhao's wife, who was still living in Singapore. She provided similar information to what his father had said, insisting that Tu Langhao hadn't kidnapped the girl. However, in his call to her, he gave one crucial piece of information. After escaping from the police, he had taken a taxi to the border between Singapore and Malaysia, then continued by bus to Penang, Malaysia. Despite his family's hopes for an explanation and the cooperation between the two neighboring countries, no progress was made in the investigation. That is, until October 30th, 10 days after his last interrogation and 20 days after the crime, when Tu Langhao voluntarily turned himself in to the police in Penang, Malaysia. Upon his surrender, Singapore police immediately sent an investigative team to bring him back for further questioning. Realizing he had no way out, Tu Langhao confessed to everything. On October 31st, a team of over 20 investigators led Tu Langhao to the location where he claimed to have disposed of Hang Na's body, on a hill in Telok Blangah Hill Park, just a 10-minute drive from the wholesale market where her mother worked. After about 30 minutes of searching, after the officers dug at the site pointed out by Tu Langhao, they noticed a foul smell near a withered bush. Upon digging into the shallow soil, they uncovered a cardboard box tightly sealed with tape. Thick, oily liquid seeped from the edges and corners of the box. No other signs were found to indicate that this was simply a burial site and not the location of the crime. The box was immediately taken to the forensic center for examination. Forensic experts determined that the box was packaging from the place where Tu Langhao had worked. Inside, they found 9 layers of plastic. After peeling away all the materials, they uncovered the severely decomposed and unrecognizable body of a small girl, who was later identified as Hang Na. Following standard procedure, the forensic team conducted a DNA comparison with Hang Na's mother, Shuying, to confirm the identity. The heartbreaking results confirmed that the body was indeed Hang Na, the little girl they had been searching for. While the forensic team worked on their final report, the police did not remain idle. During one interrogation, Tu Langhao claimed that Hang Na's death was accidental. He explained that they had been playing a game of hide-and-seek in a warehouse, but to make the game more fun, he had tied her hands and feet before hiding. He stated that he wanted her to untie herself before coming to find him. However, the physical evidence told a different story. The forensic team's report revealed that the cause of Hang Na's death was acute airway obstruction. Since Hang Na's body had been buried in damp soil for an extended period, it was difficult to determine exactly when the suffocation occurred. In addition to the airway obstruction, her face showed signs of trauma, particularly to the back of her skull. The body's prolonged exposure to the soil made it difficult to determine the specific injuries caused by blows. When the medical team examined her gastrointestinal tract to estimate the time of death, they found partially digested mangoes in her stomach, along with evidence of vomit in her mouth. Her rectal area also contained fecal matter. Tu Langhao had claimed to witness her convulsions, which could either indicate an epileptic seizure or external trauma. This was a significant point of contention in the investigation. What made the case even more perplexing was that when Hang Na's body was found, she wasn't wearing any clothes. Additionally, signs of assault were found in her private areas, including visible scratches and bleeding. It became evident that Tu Langhao had not been particularly skilled at evading suspicion. Despite his attempts to deny his crime, the evidence continued to pile up against him. In one recorded statement, Tuk Langhao explained that after tying Hang Na up and hiding, he heard a loud thud from where she was. When he rushed back into the room, he found her vomiting blood, convulsing, and losing control of her bodily functions. He said he panicked, his mind went blank, and although he wanted to untie her, he couldn't. He recalled a first aid technique he had seen online, which suggested applying pressure to the side of the neck in such situations. He attempted this, but when his hands didn't work, he laid her on her side and used his foot to apply pressure to her neck. Unfortunately, Hang Na did not survive. Tuk Langhao tried to explain the injuries to Hang Na's private area by claiming that after his failed first aid attempts, he saw her condition worsening. In a panic, he removed her jacket and placed it over her face to cover her wide-open, clouded eyes. Though he couldn't explain why he did so, he stated that while patting her back with his right hand, his left hand somehow ended up in a region he couldn't identify as either her genital or anal area. When he withdrew his hand, he noticed significant bleeding from her lower body. Following his account, the police conducted a search at the warehouse where Tuk Langhao and Hang Na had played. This warehouse, located on the 15th floor of a wholesale market, had been a location where Hang Na's mother worked. At the crime scene, police found Hang Na's DNA, including hair and blood, cigarette butts containing Tuk Langhao's saliva, and adhesive tape with his fingerprints. They also discovered fibers from the clothing both the victim and the perpetrator were wearing on that day, confirming the warehouse as the crime scene. When the case went to trial at Singapore's High Court on July 11, 2005, the prosecution charged Tuk Langhao with murder. They presented evidence from 76 witnesses, various physical evidence, and a video reenactment in which Tuk Langhao demonstrated the events. The prosecution summarized the case as follows. Around 1:40 p.m. on October 10, 2004, Tuk Langhao lured Hang Na into the warehouse under the pretense of playing hide-and-seek. After eating mangoes, he stripped Hang Na of her clothes, tied her up with rope, and sexually assaulted her. Many criticized her for being an irresponsible mother, allowing her young daughter to become so independent and be left alone in Singapore while she traveled back to China. In response to these accusations, Shuying explained that most of the donated money had been used to build a proper resting place for her daughter. She also mentioned that their home had only been expanded by one floor to provide a view of Hang Na's grave site. Additionally, the remaining funds were used to improve infrastructure in their village and to support charitable organizations promoting positive values. Despite her explanations, the controversy surrounding the family continued to grow. Regardless of the details and the speculation about the family's actions, the heartbreaking fact remains that Hang Na's life was tragically cut short at the tender age of 8. This case stands as a tragic reminder of the vulnerability of children, and the details, however complicated, should not overshadow the deep loss that occurred. What are your thoughts on this case? Feel free to share them in the comments below for discussion. Goodbye.